Hi, I'm Rich Baker from Rollin' and Riches, and this is Improv Breakdown.
I've been thinking about this a lot. As I get older, I get less and less funny. You know, like so I'm.
Yes.
What?
Turn on the microphone.
You asked for it.
Yeah.
Me?
Get in the lab. Get in the lab. Yay!
Welcome to the Improv Breakdown. I am so excited to have performer, teacher, voiceover artist, ran a training center. I mean, this guy's done it all. Mr. Landon Kirksey.
Oh, Rich, thank you. Thank you for that. That's nice. When you list out the things from my past, they don't sound like accomplishments. I was about to say accomplishments, and it just sounds like a list of things. But well, I'm glad that you mentioned all of them.
Oh, great. Me too. Oh, it's good to see you, my friend. Thanks for being on the show. So I start every guest with the same question. At one point in your life, you weren't an improviser, and then improv met you. And can you tell us how that happened?
Well, I think my first knowledge of improvisation was probably through speech and drama tournaments in like middle school, I want to say. And I'm trying to remember what the timeline was for my knowledge, for like knowing what Whose Line Is It Anyway was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, I'm pretty sure they were around the same time, because that was like middle school, and they had these speech and drama tournaments. And one of the categories, so they had a couple categories that were kind of funny. Like there was a duo improvisation, and then they also had solo improvisation, where like you literally like you picked up a topic out of a hat, and it would be a scenario. It would be like a whole scene, and then you go in the hall and plan it. and then you come back in, and then you do that. But it was called improvisation, but like there was a planning phase built in to the thing. So that is my first memory of improv. But then, and I did theater and stuff. Yeah. In high school, and we never really did, like we might have played some improv games, I think, but it wasn't really on the menu. And then I moved to Chicago, and after moving to Chicago, and I knew what Second City was and all that other stuff, but I really wasn't super like entrenched in it until I got to Second City and started taking just the bottom, like the beginner level A. Yeah. There at Second City, Chicago. So that was my first real heavy exposure of it.
So did you move to Chicago for Second City, or did you like just take it as a consequence?
No, pretty much. I mean, I went to college for like a day, and then decided that wasn't going to be my path. And I wanted to do comedy. I mean, I wanted to do stand up, or I wanted to, be a comic actor or something. And I just knew that like Second City was the place to go to do that. So that was my whole plan. I was like, oh, it's not here, and that's what they specifically teach too. And so that was it. In hindsight, not a great plan. Because there's no like
2 minutes in the hallway to prepare it. So.
That's right. I was in the hallway, and I was like, oh, okay. You look at the piece of paper, it's like, plan your life. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll go to Chicago. I don't know. Yeah.
Is that the multiple choice, like Chicago, Cleveland, or like other?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So yeah, I wasn't involved in a lot of it in a very real way, I don't think, until Chicago.
Wow. So you moved. So Second City was still a beacon for you, but not for improv, just because you knew that funny people who did like comic acting and stuff went there.
Yeah, and I knew that I knew that they made sketch reviews. I knew that.
Oh, okay.
So I knew that they like taught you how to write. I just wasn't. I didn't fully connect the dots of like, hey, the process is this. Like, you're going to improvise stuff, and then find what you like, and then re-improvise things, and then get the sketch writing and things and from there, right? Yeah. I didn't like. I was totally ignorant of that process. Had no idea. but I knew that that's sort of what they were doing. I did not really fully realize, the whole long form improvisation part of it with IO and everything else. Like, just thinking like, hey, maybe the process is also interesting for people to see in terms of performance. Like I had no knowledge of that. Wow. So I learned that there whenever I was there.
And okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but so you were studying in Chicago, and then at one point you studied and performed in New York too, right?
Yeah,
and
that's
then
right.
Back to Texas. So and then LA. So you've done it a lot of places.
Yeah, I mean, I've been unemployed a lot of places, Rich. Like, there's no city on God's green earth that I will not be unemployed in. I am determined.
Nice to have the bingo card. Check.
That's right. Yeah, I was in New York for a while. I was doing mainly stand-up in New York, and by that I mean going to whatever 4 or 5 open mics 4 days a week or 5 days a week or whatever. I wasn't even hitting it all that hard, and I was trying to kind of worm my way into television development or something like that. I was working as a PA and working for a production company. On reality TV shows, basically. And then, and that was not really going to go anywhere necessarily. So whatever. Weirdly though, the company that I worked for, or one of the companies I worked for the most, they were the ones that make that Impractical Jokers show. On True TV with those guys who like basically go out and do like candid camera stuff, but they're like improvising sort of, as they do it. It's just they did that way later. So I guess I was at that production company at the exact wrong time, which is a talent of mine.
You could have been an Impractical Joker.
I don't think so, but
nope.
But I mean, but that would have been an appropriate show for my skill set to work on. You know, if I were to work on any of those shows. But yeah, it's fine.
And then at some point you found your way to Texas and wound up being the person running the training center for 4 Day Weekend, right?
Yeah. So there's a theater in Fort Worth called 4 Day Weekend, and they've been around for over 20 years now. And when I was kind of looking into going to Texas, moving to Dallas, and this was before I actually moved, I got connected to this guy, Frank, who was one of the owners of 4 Day. And we got to talking and we had the sort of similar backgrounds, and they were interested in, the Second City part of what I was doing and all that other stuff. And then when I got there, I went to go see a show, one of their shows, and I thought it was very good. I really thought it was a very smart implementation of an improv show and something that, was worth the ticket, right? Like the ticket price. Really nice, just a good all around show, and clearly because they've been doing it for a long time. And at some point in performing there and sort of doing this sort of extra, like they basically were going to try to do this ETC stage, type thing. And for people who aren't super familiar with that would be like Second City's second sort of stage is the ETC, and so it would be like hey, this is like our second cast, basically.
We got 2 shows going,
right. And this would be even kind of further down the totem pole than that, but like at any rate, I was doing that, and I was interested in teaching, but I wasn't really sure what that meant. But it turned out that like they didn't, many of them were too busy to be teaching. They didn't really want to be teaching, the people in the cast. Because they're very busy people. They have a lot going on. They do a lot of corporate work, and I was available, and I was like, well, I'll take this on. I'll do this. And I had no idea what I was doing at all. Like, I mean,
it was your first time teaching improv was with them?
Oh, totally. Like no real clue whatsoever. And it worked out. I mean, and I also fell in love with teaching. Like I found out like, I enjoy this, So, and then kind of through that just sort of grew into this larger role of kind of running that that training center for that period of time, and bringing in other teachers and getting people from outside of Fort Worth to come in and do things. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And there were tons of great experiences and students, and I had a really good time there.
Love it. All right, so you do it all, short form, long form, everything. What is something that you learned from your experience performing that you didn't quite get in any classes? Either it just never came up, or you didn't get it at the time, but then as a performer, you're like, oh, this means something to me now. This is a new lesson.
That's a really good question. I think it's like, it's the connection between other performers. You know, if you're in classes and stuff, like, you're not sitting there and teaching or talking about, like, make a connection with your fellow scene partners or your performers or whatever. And whether that's on or off stage, kind of doesn't matter. But like, that's the thing that I realized, and I continue to realize more, especially now in this last year, that like the community part of it is so important. It's such a big part of what improvisation is all about. And it resonates on stage also. Like, I like having connections with people off stage. Then whenever we're performing on stage, there's that deeper level of trust, which is not to say that, I don't enjoy performing with people that I've never performed with. I definitely do. It's just another opportunity to like make a connection with somebody that I hadn't previously, which I think is really cool. So I think that's what I would say.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Cause I when I started, I think I thought, oh, I'm going to be a funny improviser. That's my goal. And like now I'm like, oh, the goal is to make funny happen with other improvisers. It's not about how good I am. It's how good we are as a duo or a trio or whatever.
That's right. And especially as I get older, I've been thinking about this a lot. As I get older, I get less and less funny, like, so I'm in desperate need. We're like vampires. We got to like latch on to or parasites or what are those, like anything that like rides on those whales, like a barnacle or something. I just got to attach myself to the, younger, fresher, funnier people to carry me through.
Nice. Help old Grandpa Landon on the stage.
That's right. That's right. Help me, please.
Well, as someone who's known you for a little while now, you're as funny to me as you ever were.
Thanks. Stockholm syndrome.
Never even been to Sweden. What is there anything that you were taught that that it was made a point to teach you this, either in class or coach or something, that you just discovered was like just didn't work for you, just was wrong?
I think there's a lot of stuff that we were taught. Rich, you and I are about the same age. We kind of came up about the same time. I think that there's a lot of things that we learned that are, if not entirely untrue, at least like have changed and evolved over time. Like, I don't think you have to justify anything in a scene, and remember we used to like play justification games and things like that. Like, I just feel like that stuff is like way less important now, because if it's all coming from an emotional place, there's no need to justify anything, because your emotional point of view is the justification for stuff. So like having to bend over backward to like make reality fit, I don't think that like it's not necessary anymore. I mean, and all of this is in addition to the fact of like, all the other stuff that was incredibly problematic as we were, coming up through classes and things like that, like, horrible stereotypical accents or characterizations or whatever else.
Yeah.
But I think like stuff like that it's not that it's like, I don't know if it was like wrong necessarily. It's just we've evolved,
Yeah.
And we learned how to do things a little bit differently. And I think that's a really good thing. I think that's the art form growing, right? Because it's still so young, and it's shaping itself as it matures. I think that's cool.
It's always blown me away, and I've been as guilty of this as anyone before, of like wanting to hold on to the improv and it's like it's the most malleable art form, and yet some of us, and maybe all of us at some point go through this, but some of us more than others, don't want the art form itself to change, even though changing is the essence of the art form. And I'm just like, what? Oh man, I had to learn that lesson hard.
Yeah, totally. And as you start like playing with other people who learn different ways, or like different schools of thought from different theaters or whatever it might be. And I've always been really curious about all that, like I've always wanted to know, all right, what do you do in a level 1, right? Like from theater to theater to theater, like how is this done? And not in a, sort of malicious way, like, well, let's see how they do it wrong, like just more in a, like, we're all trying to get to the same place. So, how do people start? I think that stuff is really, really fascinating.
Oh, yeah. And, from my experience, I think you were the first time, you and me, when we kind of co-taught that class for Westside, that was kind of the first time I really saw another teacher teach when I wasn't a student. And, like, we should be learning from each other way more than I think we historically have been.
Oh, totally. Like, there's teachers, the whole thing about a teacher, right, is like we want to get that person's experience and that person's point of view, and then know that there are many others, right? Like, so that if you don't necessarily agree with one style of teaching, or it doesn't resonate with you, it doesn't hit you, at like the frequency in which that you learn stuff, then you can take what you like and leave what you don't and go to somebody else. Like, and that just builds, right? It builds up your, your improv IQ, or your just general performance IQ, or whatever it is, from people. Like, I love that stuff. I think that stuff is really fascinating.
Oh yeah, and sometimes, and I think this is exactly kind of what you're saying, but just like you might learn something from a teacher and go, okay, that's not my style, but I'm going to put that in my tool belt to use when it's appropriate in any given show.
Totally. Or like, I'm going to let me try this on for a little while and see how it fits. And like, like, oh, I don't, it's okay, but I mean, it doesn't, we're,
let me try Susan Messing right now. Let me try her style. Let me try Bill Arnett, whatever. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think that stuff is really, that's cool. And again, that's what we need, those different voices, to come in, because it can't all just be, the same voice, right? It can't just be this monotonous drone of the same thing, because then that doesn't serve anybody.
No. You've been in the game a while. What keeps you doing this? What do you love?
Oh man, well, it's helpful that I can't do anything else. I mean, that's like that's extremely helpful. It's helpful that, number one, there's never been any danger of me making more money elsewhere. So like, it's like I'm good where I'm at. Like, I'm always going to be in the middle. I'm just always in the middle of the pack. So that's fine. But I mean, no, but it's fun, like that's the thing. It is fun. And like you and I both know this life of like having to diversify and do all kinds of different kinds of things. Yeah. And I think that stuff is awesome. Like, I love corporate shows, the weirdness of, sometimes that situation, right? Like, you're sitting behind a riser or something or like a built up stage in a ballroom, somewhere, and like, you're about to go do some show in the middle of some financial company's, fall presentation, whatever it is. Like, yep. I love that stuff. I truly love it. Like,
oh yeah.
And it's only gotten weirder from this last year, doing stuff on Zoom or whatever, but it's been fun. Like, it's actually interesting, and I would rather do that 1,000 times over than have to do something that I think would be either boring or whatever. I mean, and obviously there's always at some point anything can become work, right?
Sure.
with all of its challenges. But for the most part, I count myself extremely lucky to do all of the dumb stuff that I get to do.
I remember in Chicago when Groupon had just started, like one of my friends was like, he was like the 10th person hired there, something like really early on, and they were going to have to hire like 100 more people. And he came to me and he was like, hey man, I can get you a job. I can pretty much walk you in, this, that, and the other. And at the time I was doing exactly what we're doing now, piecemealing, teaching and performing and the different things. And he was like, I can get you health insurance. I can get you this, get you that. And I was just like, that sounds like the worst idea I could ever think of. And I thanked him. He meant well, but I was just like, that's not me, man. I'm not going to have fun there. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I relate. I mean, I've definitely had fantasies of like, what is it? Well, what if you just like go to like a job every day and like you have like friends there and like, but I don't see the reality of that. I see the made up romanticized version of that. Like I would be walking into a sitcom, not like an actual job. You know what I mean? Like, because then there's a reality where you have to sit at a desk and do work for 8 hours, and like, oh yeah, I don't like that part. Yeah. So
I'm out.
Right.
This sitcom has gone terribly wrong.
That's right. What a boring
first it's
sitcom.
7.5 hours too long. First of all.
That's right.
Oh my goodness. What is something that you've learned? You've had so many students. You've had so many students over the years. What is something that you remember learning from a student from the teacher's side of things?
I learn like way. I mean, it's the cliche that I learn way more in classes than I think my students do. And I think that's been true like from the very beginning. There's a lady that took classes at 4-Day, and I learned a lot from her just in her like courage to be on stage and her willingness to just like not like just to throw herself into any situation. And she was really wise, I think. And so, and it was just one of those things that it's always stuck with me. And I talk about it a lot in classes too, where it's like, and she was an older lady, and like one of the challenges that she had was always being kind of labeled as, somebody's mother or grandmother or whatever.
Yeah.
And I've heard that a lot from students, and I hate that, right? Like and she like completely, if not like solved that problem, she just like hit it with such a like a renewed energy after we had a discussion about it. Because again, like the bravery of like, get out there, be like, be what you want to be, do what you want to do, like do anything that you want to do. Yeah. And what's great about that is like, you've got all this life experience that you can draw from and like bring to the stage and bring to that scene or whatever. And that is the thing that's invaluable, as opposed to somebody who's like younger, like let's say you got like a 20-year-old student or something, and they are fearless for like getting out there, but they got nothing to back it up. Like they have no life experience whatsoever. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And it's just, I just saw that crazy difference in something that was like, if you're out there and then all the characters that you bring are rich and like they're developed and they're interesting, as opposed to, crashing headlong into a scene, without fear of anybody like telling you to not do that, but then just having nothing, like it being very surface level and ultimately, you're not really doing the work. You're just kind of getting out there. And yeah, that's a lesson that I learned. And that's probably a convoluted way to say that, but like, every conversation I had with her has always stuck with me. It was really good.
Oh, that's great. What, as far as like how you teach, do you come up with your own exercises, the curriculums? Do you borrow from other people? Is it like, what's kind of your process of putting together a class?
I mean, it depends. I mean, like everything is, I don't know, stolen from somewhere, right? Like, We're all just
Sure.
aren't we all just going to Improv Encyclopedia before every class and like grabbing games? Like, isn't that what we're doing? I love short form, and I think that I do everything I can to infuse a short form game or exercise into whatever it is that we're doing, no matter what the like curriculum is or whatever. So if I have a curriculum that is entirely not made up of short form exercises, say we're trying to develop a form of our own or something like that, then I'll always try to fit one in there, just to do something that's related to kind of what the goal is, because I love doing short form games are, I always say there's two levels of short form games, right? There's the performance part of it where you can play a game to a certain way for an audience, and then like it's guaranteed to work. This is just kind of how you play the game. There's like these unwritten rules for all these improvisers that we know how to play these games for people.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, there's what is this game trying to do? Like, what is it doing for us, the performers? And I love that part of it. And so in class, we'll focus on that part. Like, this is what this game is doing to your brain, and this is what you should be paying attention to. And that'll change the way that you play it sometimes. But I think that it's fun to focus on that part of it, to infuse a little bit of, it's fun, number one, and number two, they all have reasons behind them. There's always something that the game has a goal, and I like that.
Yeah. This is your brain on short form. I dig it. Any questions? What's it like running a training center?
Fun? I don't know.
I've never run it, and I've taught, but I've never been the person in charge. To me, that's mad respect.
It's a long. I mean, first of all, it was a while ago, and secondly, it's a customer service position. You have to. I think you have to be there and ready for any sort of question, or you just get emails all the time about various classes, or there might be a problem, or I don't know what. And so there's that, and then on the other level, you're managing the teachers and everything else. Now, I didn't have a lot of teachers to manage, right. But I had a handful, and they were all great. And having the different levels move at the same time, and try to coordinate shows and make sure that people can go from one thing into the next cleanly and all that other stuff. There's some logistical stuff there, but for the most part, it's about being a proper sounding board for all of your students who are your community, and you want to be able to kind of help and serve them and do whatever you can, give them the highest level of training that they can get, depending on what the goal is for the training center. In Fort Worth, there's there wasn't a lot of, it wasn't like, hey, we're going to become actors necessarily out of this, or we're not going to, that wasn't necessarily the goal all the time.
Yeah.
The goal is to put on a good show, obviously. Sure. I mean, that's definitely a goal. And one of my goals is what can improv do for you, Yeah. And that's a very small amount of people. The answer is, it's going to put me in show business,
Yeah.
So for the majority of the rest of the people, what does that mean? What does improv do for you? So I liked having that as kind of in the back of my head all the time.
Nice. I love that idea of serving the community, right? Because I think a lot of people can think of it as more of I gotta grow profits for this theater, right? Which is such a bullshit corporate way of thinking about it, but it's it's in the ether. It's what we think about. But you're no, how can I give the best experience to these students? And I love that.
Yeah, and the shows are going to sell your classes for the most part. So as far as trying to stay profitable and whatever, I don't know. Yeah. That stuff is certainly a concern. but because you want your classes to be full and you want people to be doing it. But, the main thing for that is you want the turnaround. You want people to be going through things and making stuff all the time. You don't want, there shouldn't be a lull. There should be like momentum moving through, and people should be excited about moving on to the next level and doing a new thing or putting on a show or whatever it is like that. You want to have that excitement, and that comes with momentum, I think.
So in addition to being an improviser, you've been a voiceover artist for a long time. Voiceover, and I'm sure you get this a lot, but like to me, it always seems like the thing that every improviser says, I should try that. And can you talk about like the Venn diagram of like improv and voiceover and like how one affects the other?
Yeah, totally. I think they're so related. And like, I mean, the only reason that I think that my agency, when I interviewed with this agency and they asked me if I wanted to do voiceover work or if I was interested in that, and I think it was solely because of Second City on the resume. Like, I don't think it was like, ooh, Landon has a great voice, let's get him in the booth, like,
let's walk him in the booth.
Yeah, right, exactly. Turn on the microphone. It's all about like you're by yourself in a booth alone. There's nothing there with you.
Yeah,
and you have this script, and you have to make it sound like a human is saying it. And that's hard. Like commercial, I do 95% commercial work. So not really. I don't really do any video games or any animation stuff where there's like it's more character based. That would be fun. That would be fun to do. But the vast majority of voiceover is commercial work, and commercial scripts have a goal, and that goal is to sell you something. And the sort of war is like we don't want it to sound like we're trying to sell people things. Like. Right. Like we want it to be like a real person, like telling you about this, awesome whatever life insurance that I got. Like, and so you, as an improviser, your job is to like find your emotional point of view in your scene, like no matter what it is. And same deal with commercial copy. Like, who am I and who am I talking to? That is like rule number one. And once you find that, then it becomes a lot easier to sound like, this is an actual person talking to another actual person. So they're very related, completely related.
Wow. And you teach voiceover. Do you get a lot of, because of just who you know, do you get a lot of improvisers in your voiceover classes?
Fewer than you might think. But I do for sure. But I think improvisers are really good at this, and I think that they ought to take a class. But that's me.
Now say it again like you're not selling it. Well,
that's as close to self-promotion as I'll ever get,
dude. I'm proud of you for self-promoting. I'll do it for you all day. But I was like, come on, that's great.
No, but I really think improvisers are really good at it, and I think most people just haven't ever tried. So. Yeah. And it's also really hard. Like, it's hard to like get a script and read it. I mean, it doesn't sound hard, but it is really hard. Like, so, getting those reps in and trying to like just do it again and again and again so that you figure out what is this point of view that I'm trying to, gain access to here. Yeah. Improvisers, we just have other. We have built-in, we do that all the time. So like we already have built-in ways to sort of get there. So I think more improvisers should do it.
Love it. All right. So we talked about a little bit about how, things evolve in this art form, but like in your time, from the time you've been in improv till now and the different cities you've lived in, what are the big trends that you've seen that have like, oh, this is just very different than it was back in, 2000, whatever?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think things have gotten a lot longer. Like just in general, like there's a lot more patience in the way that people play, and I think that's a really good thing. I feel like that can be like sometimes it's a little too much. But But I think overall, I think that's a really good thing, right? It's giving people some time to like, figure things out. And like, it's, I always say, it's not a race. Scenes, we're not trying to get to the end of a scene.
Yeah.
So like, I think that stuff is really good. But the main thing, Rich, and I'm sure you've seen this, and there's improv like literally everywhere.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, that's really the thing that blows my mind because, when I was in high school, we didn't have like an improv team, and now there's all these high schools with improv teams and stuff like that. There's college improv competitions, that kind of thing is really, really wild to me. I mean, I think that's really cool. And then every city you go to, there's something, there's something there. Be it a small theater or like a group of people or a collective, like, I think that's amazing that just it's spread everywhere.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when I first heard of it in '99, like Chicago, New York, maybe groundlings in LA, like there wasn't much other than the big cities. And now it's like, my last episode, I talked to Kat Kinney out of West Palm Beach, Florida. And she's like, oh yeah, we've got a huge thriving scene. I'm like, West Palm Beach, Florida. Great.
Yeah. Right. Of course.
Yeah.
And I think that, when we were kids or when we were growing up, like the closest, if another city had an improv theater, it was probably like a Comedy Sports or something like that,
Yeah.
And because there was a time when they like franchised or something, they like spread around, and which is great. But like, that was just that. That's what that was. And there wasn't like to me, it didn't feel like there was a push for like, oh, people should know how to do this or come on, take a class and like learn or whatever. Like it seemed like that was never offered, in my view when I was thinking about it as a kid. Maybe it was, and I just missed it. But now you can be a part of a community in just about any city you live in. Oh. And I think that is amazing. I think that's really, really fantastic.
Well, and then now you can take classes from people over the world.
Right, because it turns out there's a lot of improvisers that don't have a lot to do. So they gotta turn on their computers and teach.
Yeah.
But I mean, how awesome is that? Like, that's incredible. Like,
oh, I love it.
The opportunity to like just get a window into some of that stuff it's incredible. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I assume like me, you were probably also like, we can't do improv online. That's not gonna work.
Totally. I was definitely resistant to it. Like I didn't like the idea. I didn't, I just, I was resistant to it for sure. And then as soon as I did like a couple shows, I felt 1,000 times better. I was just like, oh, okay. Yeah, it's the same thing. Like it's not the same thing, but like I felt that like my brain did the same stuff. You know what I mean? Like, and same with classes. Like I'm saying the same stuff in classes that I would say if I were there in person. And for the most part, I'm able, like, scene work, right? It's good for scene work in a weird way because it strips down everything and we have to listen to each other. So, I think that's really interesting and that's really cool. But, I was resistant to performing over the internet.
Sure.
And it turns out it's fine. Yeah, I want to be back on stage.
Of course.
Like, yes. But also don't have to drive anywhere.
Parking got expensive in Santa
Monica. Oh
Monica.
My goodness. You know what? It's not going to get cheaper.
Not going to get cheaper. So we've talked about where improv has been. Do you get any predictions on where it's going?
Well, I think, like, I mean, with all this stuff, like the online and the Zoom booms, it's
Zoom boom.
I don't know if it hangs. I don't know if that kind of thing hangs around. But what I hope is, I mean, first of all, it's not going anywhere right now. it's going to be around for a little bit longer, and maybe a bit longer. But I hope that like we take some, the idea of what a show can be, I think is kind of busted wide open, like, and I want that desperately. I want more voices to be heard and people on stage that better represent the community that we're in. Like that's what I want. Like I want more diverse voices on stage. I want different kinds of shows. Like I think that is going to be a really, really amazing thing once it's safe to be in a space and we can have a theater again. I think that stuff I'm extremely hopeful and looking forward to that very much.
Yeah. Like more experimentation with just what this art form even is or could be.
Totally. And doing things that I wouldn't even consider them experiments. It's just like, hey, this is just different, like it's going to look a little bit different, and we're going to do different kinds of things, and that's going to be the accepted part of it. The last thing I want is to go right back in to, doing, some stuff that we've done before, right? Like sure. I think
Herald
that
Herald teams, more Herald teams.
Right. Yeah. And I think we need to learn from all this. And I think this is a good opportunity for that,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then, in addition to being a performer and a teacher, you're also a commentator. I don't know what to call us, those of us that do shows like this, but you've got the Improv Cast with Jay.
Yeah, Jay Succo and I, we do a show together, a podcast. Well, I've been podcasting for a long time in various forms with various shows. And yeah, Jay and I, we've done Improv Cast for several years now. I think we have 80 some odd episodes.
Wow.
And yeah, we have not been consistent with it, I'll say, over the last year because of things, sure. Not just pandemic related, but definitely pandemic didn't help.
Sure.
That's going to be the whole just the summation of the pandemic. The pandemic, didn't help.
Didn't help.
So, that we've been very slow on, getting new episodes and whatnot, but hopefully we'll kind of get back to some regularity with it. But love talking to improvisers. I love talking to students about, just how they got into it. Right. And like what they take out of it. Like, I think that stuff that's really, really cool. And like I said earlier, like, what does improv do for you? Right. Like, it hits everybody differently, and I think that is what is amazing about the art form. And it's just cool to like listen to people talk about creating stuff with other people. Like, I think regardless of what the medium is, I think that's always really cool.
Oh, 100%. So where do you want to send people? Plugs, links, what you got?
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, I have a website. It's just landonKirksey.com. And in theory, that would be updated with things that I'm doing. That would be the theory. I have all the social media stuff too, but I'll be honest, this last year, I haven't done anything on social media. I don't open it up. I don't really look at it. Yeah. I kind of avoided it. Particularly for a good chunk of last year, prior to, we'll say the month of November.
Did something happen? Or
why in the world would I do that? Why would I avoid social media at that time?
It's a mystery.
It's a mystery. But then also, there was a pandemic on top of things, which we've discussed.
Didn't help.
So, I kind of just avoided the whole thing.
Good for you.
But I have those things. I'm on the social medias. But yeah, the website probably is the place that should go. And then that's a good note for myself to update the website.
Writing this one down. All right, good.
Yeah. Make a little note to self.
Awesome. I'll link that and Improvcast in the show notes, of course. And,
yes, thank you.
This is going to come out in March, and I know you probably don't know this far in advance what you're going to do, but people should always be on the lookout for voiceover classes from you because you do that pretty regularly, right?
Definitely doing the voiceover classes fairly regularly, and it is a fun thing to do, especially now because the voiceover is one industry that hasn't really changed a lot on account of everything.
Yeah.
Because everybody, I've been auditioning and recording from home for years.
Yeah.
So it's a weird thing where it's sort of untouched, but not really. But it's still a great opportunity for improvisers, and it's a good skill to have. And also, I'll say this about the voiceover classes too: a good portion of that is about home studio recording and setting up for stuff. So it's also useful if you wanted to do a podcast or had other things that you wanted to create and needed a little boost for home studio recording. So it's
and do you
it's a lot
private
about
coach
that too.
voiceover artists too?
Sure. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Great.
Listen to auditions, put together some demo reels, things like that.
Excellent.
For sure. Yeah. All the
For
time.
all things voiceover, see Landon Kirksey is the man.
That's me.
See, this is me self-promoting you because
thank you.
self-promoting you. That doesn't.
It
Anyway,
would be a weird thing if you self-promoted me. That's
I'm
an
Landon Kirksey.
right. That I'm pretty sure is a crime. But I mean, I wouldn't prosecute, but
it sounds like a lot of work.
I'm not litigious. But
Don't tell people that. They're like, okay, we know who we can identity we can steal, and not gonna do it.
That's right. You know what? Hey, listen. You want to steal my identity? You get my credit too. So that's that.
Here, take it and see what you can do with this. I don't know.
Yep. I dare you. I dare you to take money from me. You'll get a lot of question marks in response.
Oh, God. Oh, Landon Kirksey, thank you for being on the breakdown.
Yes, thanks, Rich. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about improv, please put them in the comments below. To get notified about upcoming episodes, subscribe to the Roland and Rich's YouTube channel and click the little bell icon below. Thanks, improvisers, and keep making each other look good.